Valtteri Bottas has the toughest job in Formula 1. Being Lewis Hamilton's teammate is by no means an easy task, and beating him over the course of a season is extremely rare. Only twice has this ever happened, 2011 with Jenson Button and 2016 with Nico Rosberg. And ever since that championship slipped through his fingers, he has elevated to a level of completeness and consistency which rivals some of the all-time greats of the sport. Unfortunately for Valtteri, he's been subject to a lot of criticism over the years for not managing to ever properly challenge his teammate in a championship fight. This was especially clear last season, as he was realistically the only man who could stop Hamilton from running away with another title, given the dominance of the W11. The only time where he really out and out beat Lewis during a race weekend was at the start of the season in Austria. Had the Brit not performed his practice starts out of position in Sochi, Bottas would have had just a single win in 2020, which is pretty poor considering the car he had underneath him. In the final 7 races of last season, Valtteri had a mix of poor performances and some bad luck. At the Eiffel Grand Prix, he was forced into an error at turn 1, losing the lead to his teammate and eventually retiring from the race with an engine failure. In Portimao, he put up as good a fight as he could against Hamilton, but ultimately, the 7-time champion was just too much of a force to contain as he went on to take the 92nd win of his career. In Imola, Bottas was on course to win his first race since Russia before he ran over some debris which damaged his floor. On top of this, a virtual safety car brought out for Esteban Ocon on lap 29 gave Hamilton a free pit stop to take the lead of the Grand Prix. Then in Turkey, he spun a total of 6 times and finished P14 in the race as his teammate went on to seal the championship in style with the 10th victory of the season. Starting on the front row in Bahrain, Valtteri got off to a poor start, dropping to P6 on lap 1. After the restart, he managed to make his way up to 4th, however, he picked up a puncture soon after and was forced to pit. He recovered back up to P8, but it was another huge knock to his confidence, especially after such a poor performance last time out. And then came the infamous Sakhir Grand Prix. On the Tuesday ahead of the weekend, it was announced that Lewis would not be participating due to catching the virus. This opened the door to George Russell, who made the step up from Williams to partner Bottas, which was the last thing the Finn needed. After receiving a thrashing from Hamilton for 5 races in a row, his self-esteem must have been extremely low. Add to that a talented 23-year-old young gun with nothing to lose, joining your team for a single weekend when there's already talk of you losing your seats to that same guy. Bottas was living a nightmare. Should it have been? No. But psychologically, he wasn't in a good place, which caused him to drive below his capabilities. As we know, Bottas took pole, but Russell jumped him at the start and brilliantly controlled the race until both their races fell apart. It wasn't a good look for the Finn, considering how little time George had to get up to speed. The final race in Abu Dhabi was an improvement, as he managed to secure a solid P2 behind Max Verstappen. The start to this season has been very much something similar. He's been unlucky, but he's also underperformed at the same time. In some races like Bahrain and Spain, he was there to pick up points for Mercedes in the constructors by finishing P3 behind the 2 championship protagonists. However, in races like Imola and Azerbaijan, he was fighting George Russell, who was in a Williams. I'm sorry, but when you have one of the fastest cars on the grid, you cannot be battling for position with a backmarker. Just like how you can't afford to lose 4 places in just 6 corners to drivers in midfield cars. The situation that Valtteri currently finds himself in reminds me a lot of 2018. The threat from Red Bull this year looks just as real as Ferrari did back then. The Finn had a couple of opportunities to win races in China and Azerbaijan, but on both occasions, unfortunate circumstances prevented him from converting. He was solid in Bahrain and Spain, and pretty mediocre in Monaco. The only error he made in the first 6 races that year was in Melbourne, where he crashed in qualifying. Otherwise, I'd say that his start to that campaign from a performance standpoint was decent. And yet, this would go on to be his worst season in the sport. One so poor that he even considered retiring altogether. After finishing 5th at the Monaco Grand Prix, he sat 4th in the Drivers' Championship with 68 points. If we compare this to the number of points he scored so far this year, which is just 47, it starts to become clear just how bad these opening few rounds have been for Bottas. In fact, if we take a look at a broader comparison between his 2018 and 2021 seasons after 6 races, we can see that a lot of the stats are pretty much identical apart from pole positions and retirements. The first retirement of this year came at the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix, where he came together with Russell on lap 32, and the second one came as a result of a pit stop mishap in Monaco. Now, we cannot say for certain that the correlation between his poor start in 2021 and 2018 means anything for the rest of the season. There are still over 2/3 of the races yet to be completed, all of which are opportunities for Bottas to swing the pendulum in his favour. However, here's why I doubt he'll be able to make it happen this time around. Now, we've seen that Valtteri is capable of picking himself up when faced with difficult circumstances. In 2019, he bounced back brilliantly after the woes of the previous season to win 2 of the opening 4 rounds, and then went on to win another 2 races towards the end. A lack of consistency and a few too many errors meant that he could only take the championship fight so far until Lewis sealed it in Austin. But it was still his best effort yet, and many expected him to put up an even stronger challenge in 2020. But it turned out to be the opposite. After the first race, things only went downhill. Whether it was poor luck in Silverstone or being unable to overtake anyone in Monza, barely anything seemed to be going his way. As I mentioned earlier, the last few races must have been extremely tough on him mentally, with the final blow coming in Sakhir. Back in March during the car launches, Valtteri said he'd been working on his mental health over the winter to help him refocus his energies on winning this year's championship. However, now there's a strong outside threat from Red Bull, he's not only got to contend with his teammate, he's also got to beat Max Verstappen. And so far, it's become clear to see that those two are in a completely different league all by themselves, with the Finn only being able to do so much. With Sergio Perez getting closer and closer to being fully up to speed, he'll have another problem on his hands as Checo is one of the best Sunday drivers on the grid. And with rising competition, we've seen many a time where Bottas has crumbled in the heat of battle. He's pretty poor when it comes to wheel-to-wheel racing, especially when he gets caught up in the midfield. It's also been interesting to see Bottas's more selfish approach in 2021. During this year's Spanish Grand Prix, Mercedes pulled a Hungary 2019-like strategy call by pitting Hamilton on lap 43 of 66 to hunt down Verstappen for the race win. They had this luxury because 1, Perez was out of the picture, and 2, the only driver Lewis would come out behind was his teammate. However, when the Brit got close to Valtteri and Mercedes gave him the order to not hold Lewis up, he did the exact opposite. He clearly wasn't willing to give up the position so easily, which tells me that he might not be as kind later on in the year if his teammate needs backup. The man himself alluded to this prior to the start of the season, stating, "It's important to think more about myself and the goals I want to achieve in my career. You can't change yourself, but if I look at the bigger picture of my career, it's not going to last forever. If you're with a top team for 5 or 6 years, they expect you at least once to win the title. That's how it goes. That's how F1 works, and I acknowledge it completely." From this, it sounds to me like Valtteri knows the writing is on the wall. His time at Mercedes could very well come to an end if he doesn't step up his game. Right now, what he needs to focus on is winning a race as soon as possible and building some momentum to kickstart his championship campaign. Will he be able to do it? Or is it just a matter of time before Mercedes announce they are done with him? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. As always, if you enjoyed the content, don't forget to give this video a like, and if you're new around here, consider subscribing and turning on bell notifications to keep up to date with the latest content. I will be increasing my upload schedule over the next couple of months, so there will be plenty of content coming your way very soon. And as always, I'll see you in the next one.